Hello everyone. Disgracefully, figures were announced today reporting on the amount of people that have died in homeless services or known to homeless services around the streets of Dublin over the last year at 40. This is a national outrage. But of course, the media class will not cover the story with any great detail because they're complicit at the behest of the political establishment of Ireland that has oversaw this devastating crisis of Ireland, our own full-blown humanitarian disaster that has never got the attention it deserves. We've seen that over the last number of years, for instance, with the amount of people dying in the streets. Rough sleepers are not counted in the official homeless figures, of which there's over 10,500 people currently in emergency accommodation. Not to mention the hundreds of thousands that are called couch surfers, which is very euphemistically called couch surfers, with people that can't afford their homes. Not to mention the immigration chaos, and notwithstanding the pressures that the immigration chaos is also putting on serious lack of basic public services in Ireland. Now, this isn't a new phenomenon in Ireland because it's been normalised by successive governments that's allowed this to happen. There's no such thing as an independent public inquiry into all these deaths. That's the minimum that should be called about the deaths of people who have died in the streets because of state-sponsored policies and been abjectly left behind because of their policies that favour the landlords, the developers, the very rich, while ordinary people are the ones that carry the can. And at the sharpest end we see people who have died in the streets. There was reports issued to the National Homeless Action Committee. Now there's such a thing called the Homeless Action Committee in Ireland. It should be really called the Inaction Committee. These grandstanding committees that are set up that pay lip service to the needs of ordinary people. And according to the Department of Health figures, the median age of people who have died in the streets is just around 40 years of age. Now it's less for women. 36 and a half was the average age of women who have died in the streets, and 42 was the average age of men dying in the streets. Think about that logically. In 2020, there was 85% of deaths were people aged 65 or more. So if you consider the lifespan of people who are forced out in the streets for a myriad of different issues, majority of people forced out are because of evictions, because of domestic situations, and notwithstanding people who have come out of foster care and a myriad of other issues where there is serious lack of basic supports for people. Now currently Dublin City Council have purposed Dublin Region Homeless Executive to deal with their homeless crisis in terms of providing emergency accommodation. And last year the budget was €300 million, and now they're running out of money for homeless services. When you consider the total budget for Dublin City Council, it's 1.34 billion last year. So basically, just about 25% of that budget was used on homeless services. It's just absolutely unbelievable when you consider the money that's going into these services. Accommodation providers, a lot of very wealthy individuals are making so much money out of the homeless misery of people, rather than offering proper state supported accommodation and proper wraparound services that people need, and proper investment in those services, rather than farming it out to charities or non-government organisations which receive a huge amount of government funding. Last week I spoke about one of those, the McVerry Trust, in terms of the huge bailouts they received. All again being fundamentally part of propping up the establishment. But again, we've seen reports today about the housing assistance payment. 12 out of 16 locations checked around Ireland, people did not have access to homeless accommodation payments, or were not within the limits for homeless accommodation payment. Now this is a huge transfer of public money into private hands. Rather than delivering public homes for people, it's about enriching the landlord class, and people are forced into poverty because they can't afford those sky high rents because of the rental disaster in Ireland as well. And there's no security of tenure for private renters. We have a record amount of evictions, 19,000 evictions last year. Absolutely astronomical. But of course, the media won't talk about this. The inhumanity of evictions and Irish history of evictions should tell you a different story to what's really going on. And also, the lack of public housing being built and the sell-off for public housing, and the opening of the door to vulture funds to profit massively from the crisis of ordinary people. Now, this is the reality to what's going on in Ireland, and at the sharpest end, tragically, there is brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers who have died on the streets of Dublin, many unnecessarily, and the bare minimum that should be required is a public inquiry. Plus you need a proper housing first model, not the housing first model that the government are currently pushing through. The housing first model with proper wraparound support services, having the stability of a home and having the necessary services so people remain in those homes and are supported every step of the way, whether it's through addiction issues or whether it's through a myriad of different issues that people need support with as well. As I said, at the sharpest end, we've seen the ones who have tragically died in the last number of years. Most recently, remember the two victims, Donald Scanlon and Alex Warnick, who tragically died along the banks of the Grand Canal a number of months ago, added to the list of the amount of people who have died on the streets of Dublin. This is our own full-blown humanitarian disaster that never, ever gets the reaction it deserves from the media and from the political establishment, where they're all garnering up for voting season in the general election coming up in the next number of weeks. The government won't talk about this, won't talk about their abject failures, won't talk about what's going on, unless we really deal with providing a home as a social good in Irish society. We will continue the same policies moving forward as well. It's an absolute disgrace. It's our own modern day shame on Ireland. And Ireland, they say, is wealthy, and Ireland, they say, is civilised. This is far from being civilised, and it shows you how the wealth is distributed in Ireland towards the top of society rather than having a basic social, societal and economic good of having a home and having people feel like they're contributing to society and having a dignified existence in a republic. Thanks for all the support of my videos. Really appreciate them, and take care. Press subscribe as well to my YouTube channel as well. Slán. Bye bye.